Welcome back to the Integrate Intelligently podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Brickler. Today, I am welcomed again by my brother, founder and CEO of the CADTALK software, Scott Brickler. And we are, I would say, humbled by our guest today, Stephanie Clark. So Stephanie Clark is a Microsoft BC consultant. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Stephanie, I know you work with manufacturing companies. So obviously we work with lots of manufacturing companies. CADTALK is an integration platform for manufacturing companies for engineering to manufacturing handoff. And I know you work with a lot of manufacturing, but I always ask everybody, what's your origin story for getting into ERP? Usually when you're growing up, you don't usually be like, I want to grow up and I want to go to be an ERP consultant.
Well, I kind of did a little bit. There is a little truth to
Man,
that. I'm a
I
weirdo
didn't
in that.
realize this was the story. She's like, I don't want to be Iron Man or Wonder Woman. I'm be an ERP consultant.
I didn't know it was ERP then, but when I went to college, I went to University of Kentucky. I have 2 degrees, one in accounting and one in decision science, which is a weird degree at Kentucky. It's in the School of Business, but it focuses on manufacturing operations or IT. And you can do kind of a blend. So I did manufacturing operations because that was always my passion, but I wanted to work with business systems. And so mixing accounting and manufacturing felt supernatural. But I got really started in this game a very, very long time ago. I went to work for a company as their manufacturing manager. And first day on the job, they go, hey, we just got this new ERP system called Navision and you're in charge.
That's
And
how
I got
every
to learn.
project starts.
Yeah, I got to
Grab the
learn
new
that.
person. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, you be perfect for this.
Right. It kind of was, and it was perfect for me. I fell in love with Nav. That was way back Nav 1.0. I was 5 years old at the time when I started. That's what I tell everyone anyway. So I started as an end user, did that for a couple of years, and my consultant said, hey, you have a knack for this. You'd be a really good consultant. And I applied, became a consultant, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Well, eventually you started your own firm too, right? I mean, that's kind of, yeah.
I did. I've worked for, folks can look at me on LinkedIn and they can see I've worked for a lot of the major players in the channel. And about 2 years ago, I said, gosh, if I'm going to keep working these long hours,
You gotta
I'm
do
going
it
to
for
do it for
yourself.
me. Yeah. And I wanted to approach things a little bit differently, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit, but I wanted to do things a little bit differently. So I started Elliott Clark Consulting, and now I get to work my hours, which are still super long, as you guys know, as business leaders, but that's okay.
Yeah, there's a little side note where I'm based here in Northern Kentucky, just about 80 miles north of, or probably a little less than that, just right across the river from Cincinnati. And my nephew actually goes to UK. So it's UK.
Fantastic. I usually get to Cincinnati about once a month. I've got a client up there. So next time I'm in the neighborhood, I'll let you know. We'll grab lunch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got lots of good restaurants these days. They were saying like we're a top 20 food destination
Yeah.
now.
You guys are crazy foodies up there. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
That's right.
My waistline can attest to that. I mean, that's true.
Like you said, you worked at lots of other the VARs, the big resellers and GSIs out there, and now you have your own business. What's the thing that every customer of yours knows about you, right? When you talk about it so much, they go, man, if you talk to Stephanie, she's going to bring up this thing.
Yep. My clients would immediately say, if you talk to Steph, she's going to hound you on the process. I am super big on business process. I just did a conference 2 or 3 weeks ago that was for CPAs and bookkeepers. And I had a speaking session there, and it was all about helping them understand that you got to fix the process before you're kind of ready for ERP. And so I over and over and over in my session, I go process, technology, automation in that order every single time. If you try to automate a really bad process, you're just going to have bad data in a bad process that's faster. And so I harp on my clients constantly about making sure that the business process is aligned properly, and then use the software as a tool to accomplish the process more efficiently. And then, of course, automation takes that human element out of there and helps it go even faster. But it only works if you have a good process and good data, of course. But yeah.
That's great. Is that something that you saw was kind of that was the thing that you wanted to do different than the people you'd worked for in the past, or just kind of the way that the other firms did it? I
Yeah,
think.
100%. It's a piece that I'm super passionate about, and myself and consultants who work with me. Incidentally, all the consultants who work with me have worked for me before in my past. I've been around the channel a good while, so they've followed me along and they're passionate about this as well. But what we see is a lot of consultants out there can talk features and functions and they know exactly how the software works, but then they walk away and the clients are still going, well, but our process isn't any better because they didn't line up those features and functions with a good, strong business process. And so that's where we start. That's if you go on my website, you'll see profit process first all over the place. That's really what we preach to. We always talk about best practice in the industry, right? And they don't know what that really means or how does that best practice evolve to fit their specific business needs. So that's really what we look at.
Yeah, I think it's like if you, when you buy a system like BC and your hope is that your business improves, right? So if you, and it's like, well, I think a lot of people, they buy these systems and they just make it do the same thing they did before. And it seems like there's a lot of pressure to do that because there's a lot of stress in implementing these systems. So they're kind of like, let's go back to what I know and just make it do what I used to do. And then you're like, well, you just kind of threw away all the value. Like the reengineering of the process is really where the value's at.
My client that's in Cincinnati that I visit pretty regularly, that's exactly what I didn't do their implementation. I came to them just after go live and we do something called a second opinion service. But this client, they were on QuickBooks, they were on paper for all things inventory, manufacturing, all of that. And they just did the lift and shift and put that straight into Business Central and couldn't understand why nothing was right. And the operations team was struggling because they had never run a system before. Everything was done on paper. So it just didn't work. Not because the implementers did anything wrong. They didn't. They taught them the system, but they didn't match up that business process along with the system and really help them reimagine how the process needs to flow. It's going to go differently when you're now introducing systems where there was paper before.
I typically, when I hear someone say it's a common refrain in any software, like this, this software doesn't work, or whatever the software is, you could input BC doesn't work, or CADTALK doesn't work, or SAP doesn't work, or whatever, and they'll always say it doesn't work. And usually for me, that's a tell that, like, wait a minute, these softwares work. They're global softwares. They're sold, you know, all over the world with thousands and thousands and thousands of customers using it every day to their business. These things work. So it's just a matter of something must be off.
We see that pretty regularly. I mentioned our second opinion service. We have folks come to us say, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong. It just doesn't feel right. And so we go through and take a look at their Business Central configurations. We look for things we commonly find that folks struggle with. And there are consistencies across the board. Everybody tends to struggle with inventory costing, which is one of my favorite parts. They struggle with that data accuracy. But then when we dig a little bit deeper and look beyond just the basic software settings, it's usually people are doing things outside the system or, there's a process that's broken somewhere, at least in one spot, maybe multiple spots.
I know, like one of the things that we used to see, when I was a very similar backstory of getting thrown into an ERP implementation earlier in my career was like a lot of times like the friction of using the system caused a lot of the problems
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the data was bad because it was just too hard to do it, or it is, the tool was a little bit off. That screen is not as easy to use as last screen, or nothing's easy to use as Excel, right? They tend to like that's the part that like kind of causes a lot of that's been my experience. They cause a lot of friction, which then cause the data to be bad. And then they tend to have less value from the system they bought from doing that.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's happening in the Business Central world, particularly right now, because there is a lot of pressure to do lower cost implementations. And so there are the packaged implementations. We offer them as well. So I'm not bashing them by any stretch. But what I find is that you miss that little hand holding piece a little bit because it's really train and go, push the data in, train and go. And you don't get that same level of user adoption because maybe let's face it, there's a whole lot of fields on the screen and, only a third of them apply. And, so it gets really hard. And so really making sure that you set your users up for success to really adopt it. Anytime you start a new software, it's going to be hard. because it's different and we're humans and we don't like change just naturally. But you kind of have to get over it and you have to push those things in. So, yeah, it's a hard spot. We doing ERP implementations have a bad rap out there. It doesn't have to be that ugly, but I'm never going to tell anybody it's easy.
I would agree with that. As long as they kind of understand, like, I think it's a good point. If you set the expectations, it's going to be difficult, but worth it if you do the hard, because if otherwise it could just be difficult and not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think every one of us have been here on a project, right? ERP project in some way. I know Scott, like you, Stephanie, have worked on ERP projects. I've worked on them well, but through CADTALK. But I think it's regardless universal, right? You start talking to them and they say, we do it this way, or we got this, we want to customize everything over that way. And we needed to do this thing over here. And this is just our process. And then you want to go, you're wanting to do some things that typically these softwares don't do, which is then your sign of, I think something's wrong with this process.
Of this special snowflake syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're different.
We're
Yeah,
different.
We're different.
We're different. And I try to tell my clients, I don't want to take away your true differentiators, but just because you've done it this way doesn't mean that there's not maybe a better way. And most of the time I can argue. I'm pretty good at arguing. I can talk them through enough of the hiccups that they run into in an old process to kind of let them see how, if they streamlined it, if they make it more efficient, there's a reason most of the software packages work the way they work, because there is a standard flow to it. And that's what you have to get folks to understand. It's hard. It's hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's like, my differentiator is I do it all on paper. No, I don't think that works.
Yeah. That's not going to get you very far,
Probably not the differentiator that does this.
especially in today's AI world. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of what I hear, and I think part of the challenge and the workarounds is usually a lot of times around the data quality. As Scott, you mentioned, is the data quality. When the data quality is poor, you have choices to make. You either going to go through, now easier with AI these days, but you're going to either go through the process of cleaning that data up and to prep it so that you can have a good going forward, or you take the garbage that you had and put it in here and it's the same outcome. But having that data quality, that data integrity not be at the level that you want it to be, that has an impact. And then that the thought of like, hey, I'm going to clean up all this data, the thought of that is not appealing to anyone.
It gets overwhelming. I'm working with a client right now. They were on a very old version of Nav, not quite as old as the version I started on, but not too far off. Really, so we're doing a re-implementation onto Business Central. And before, they didn't use the manufacturing module. They kept all of their bill of materials outside the system, and they did some costing gyrations on Excel and all of these things. And they're very excited to start using manufacturing. I'm like, but guys, first we have to get our bombs right. And before we get our bombs right, we have to have our item list right. And so working on that has been a challenge. They're ready to go and start processing, production orders and doing all the things. I'm like, we're not close. We have to have good data first. And we don't have to start with everything. Start with the handful of items that you do 80% of the time. That whole 80-20 rule is a real thing. So we're working through that. But without good data, everything's wrong. Costing, planning, everything.